hangout already. Earlier this morning, I had a hangout. This evening. I just woke up before. So, I have this video up here just in case somebody says I don't have raccoons, or I didn't capture raccoons. No, I'm just kidding. This video is about a new idea of the origin of the universe. The origin of the universe has to be made from the slowing down of time and the limiting of distance, so that we can work, because we consist of matter, and matter has to have time, fabrication of time, in order for things to happen, biological function to happen, in order to make our existence possible. Because we don't exist at the speed of light. We're not infinite beings. We're limited to time and distance, and things don't happen for us at the speed of light. We're nowhere near speed of light beings. So, instead of a big bang, everything coming from nothing, it's a big crunch. The opposite. Everything has to come from everything that already was, or every potential that already was, every power that already existed. Because you can't have something coming from nothing. You have to have something coming from an existing force or existing power, because energy can't make itself, it can't order itself. You can't get more and more energy from less and less energy or power. You have to start with every potential, all the potential possible. You have to start top down, or the creation is top down, not bottom up. So, people were wondering where I was. I was off in the woods thinking deep thoughts and figuring out the origin of the universe. No, I'm just kidding. I just thought of it today, actually, or earlier today, or yesterday or something, I don't know. But, yeah, it was yesterday. Because what we do see, we have to go by what we do see. What we do see, hold on a second. What we do see is that we do see that matter is coalescing. We don't see matter expanding or going through a big bang, or matter spreading out. We see matter coalescing. Of course, if it coalesces in one place, it's going to stretch space in another place, and that's why there's a vacuum in space and the stretching of space, because you have to slow time down for things, for biological things to happen. So what slows down time is matter. So you have to make matter, you have to coalesce matter, or order matter. In other words, bunch it up. You have to bunch up matter so that it's like a spring, and it's putting out energy. So that it's always going from order to disorder. That means it had to have been ordered by a greater power, obviously, because you can't get greater power by less and less power. You can only get great power by a greater power. And that's what the evidence is that everything exists by a greater power. Because energy can't make itself, energy can't order itself. Everything is forced to be what it is, and as far as elements are concerned, and everything does what it's directed to do as far as biology is concerned. And so it's not complicated, it's just a matter of seeing what the evidence is. And the evidence is that when matter coalesces, time slows down and distance contracts, or distance becomes limited or finite. And it's not that, light does slow down, but it remains constant inside a given frame of reference. In other words, if you have a mile, that mile can expand or shrink, but it's always going to be 186,000 miles a second in light. The problem is when you shrink the mile, and when you slow down time, it's going to take light longer to travel less distance, so that it's actually slower in a more contracted frame of reference than it is where, say, for example, where we are. And if there's less gravity than where we are, then that means the rate of time is faster and the distance is greater for a mile. So in that case, this light would travel faster, traveling and covering greater distance in a single second. But I don't think you have to worry about that so much. But anyways, that would be the case if that was the case, where there was less gravity or less contracting of distance and time. Anyways, I'm not so sure that this conversation thing here is working. Showing one viewer, if the one viewer can post something, maybe I can see if it's working or not. It wasn't working before, that's what I'm saying. And I don't necessarily want to pull up the thing to see if it's working. But I suppose I could, just for the fun of it. I got my screen turned off. Okay. Oh yeah, it's working. It's working. I'll write something here. Hello. Okay, so I got the thing turned off anyway. The sound is turned off, so it's not going to make noise. Alright, it's working now. So, let's see, let me see. Oh, there we go. Alright. So, creation is evident, and the creation is by the forcing or making of things to exist, which is matter, which slows down time and distance. So because the speed of light is actually instantaneous, it doesn't take any time for the speed of light to arrive, because it exists at the speed of light, where there is no time and no distance. We don't exist at the speed of light. We exist in a contracted fabrication of time and distance, where time is slowed down and distance is contraction, or infinity is contracted into finite in a finite fabrication, and and time, which would be instantaneous, takes time. And the more matter it is, the more it takes time for time to pass by. So instead of there being a big bang from the inside out, the evidence is that there's a big crunch from the outside in. In other words, you can't get something from nothing. You have to get something from something greater that already was, or potential that already was. And everything that exists is from a force and a power. So that it takes power to make matter, and when you make matter, it makes gravity, and gravity slows down time and distance, which makes it possible for us to exist, in which all life that we see can be ordered into existence. And everything is what it's directed to be. Everything is what it's ordered to be. So it's not complicated. It just takes a little bit of thought, and you can figure it out. But I mentioned earlier about Stephen Hawking, before he passed away. I don't really, I never was really impressed with him because, and then when he said that everything can exist because of gravity, that just showed me what kind of a thinker that he was. Because you can't have gravity unless you have matter, and matter requires energy to make. And unless you have energy, you can't make energy. Energy can't make itself. And you can't have gravity until you make matter. When he said everything exists because of gravity, there is no gravity unless you have matter. Which, I don't know what he was thinking when he said that, but that makes no sense whatsoever. So everything is, like he thinks that all matter existed in a single point, and I guess that's where the gravity, comes from in his mind. But you can't have a single point where there's nothing and that yet all matter is there. You can't have it. You can either have nothing or you have something. And it takes energy to make something. It takes power. Everything costs something. Everything costs something, and we can't afford it. We're here for the ride. We're here long for the ride, but we have to tell the truth. That's all we have to do is tell the truth. We have to be honest and about what we see, and know that energy goes from order to disorder. It was ordered and not by itself. It didn't make itself. It was ordered by a greater force. And if you go, infinite regress of a greater and greater force, then you'll end up with all power, all knowledge, all wisdom, all sense of beauty. And, the only reason why we can understand any of this is because we are made in the image and likeness of God. And we have to be responsible for what, the things that we see, and be honest about what it is that we're seeing. You can't just say there's no evidence of God when everything is evidence of God, because everything comes from a greater and greater force, not a lesser and lesser force. This just makes no sense. The logic is that there is greater and greater force for everything that there is. Because if there's any force at all, it has to exist by a greater force. It can't exist or make itself exist. I mean, It's simple to me. I don't know why people have a problem with it. Maybe no one ever explained it to them, but there's just no excuse. Creation is evident. People are without excuse. And of course, if if any of them wanted to talk, I'd be willing to discuss it, but they would lose badly. If a scientist came and talked to me, any scientist that you choose, they would lose badly. That's why they don't show up, because they know they're going to lose. Every major debater like, P.Z. Myers or Richard Dawkins or Lawrence Krauss, they know they're going to lose. They know they're going to make themselves look like ignoramuses because they have no position. They have no valid position. They have no argument. You got Lawrence Krauss saying, "Oh, because there's a fluctuation. If there's a fluctuation, there's time and distance, and that requires energy. That requires power, because you have limited time and distance. You have where things can occur, and of course that's more along the speed of light, where what atoms move, the way atoms move, is closer to the speed of light, but everything that has mass, takes time to fluctuate or work if it's made into a mechanism. Because everything that we're made of is made of matter, which has weight, has mass, and that can't move very fast. I mean, it moves very fast considering what it does, like all the information inside of us, and the duplication of information, and the copying of the information, and the making of proteins. That all happens very fast and very accurately. And in the real world, you don't have working parts that make themselves or accidentally made. You don't have a fender that accidentally formed itself for a car or any part. Nothing. Every car part is specific to what it is intended to do, and that's the same thing with every protein. Every protein inside of us is specific to what it's supposed to do. Not only that, every protein makes a structure that's specific to what it's supposed to do. And that's what we consist of. I remember a long time ago when some kids were talking about nanotechnology. They're saying, "Oh, they're going to make robots, and then they're going to duplicate, and they're going to take over the world, and all this." And so I asked, "Well, what do you mean? What kind of parts are they going to use?" Well, they didn't know how to answer. They said existing parts, but it was a good answer. They said existing parts. Well, yeah, the existing parts are basically the elements and molecules inside of us, and they're essential to our existence. Each element and molecule that's inside of us is essential for our existence, which numbers, like there's about 17 elements, atoms, different kinds of atoms, elements, gold, whatever, gold, carbon, phosphorus, sulfur, all the elements, 17 of them, that are absolutely essential for our existence, without which we wouldn't even be here. If one of those elements was missing, we wouldn't be here. And they are the common elements. 17 of the most common elements are essential to our existence. And another equal amount of elements are beneficial. For example, even silicon, which I don't think is even included, is essential for our existence because silicon is what we stand on. what we live on, and without that, we wouldn't have an Earth to live on, because the balance would be, everything would be off. So even the non-essential elements, the beneficial elements, some of them are essential. In the case of silicon and many other elements. So that's a lot of elements. If it's 17 is the most common, and then an additional equal amount of elements are beneficial, there's a lot of intent and purpose going on there, considering that no car part ever made itself. And besides it being an essential working part, of course, it still has to be, sequenced, concatenated, programmed, so that it can, make what's required for us to exist. And actually, the instructions inside of us, by way of DNA, if you can't figure it out, are the actual commands that make us and remake us from the time we're young to the time we get old. The instructions are still making parts of us, essential parts, that we have to have. And of course, if it doesn't make us, if it doesn't make those parts, then we die. So those instructions are actually a pre-existing written set of instructions. They're concatenated. They're a specific sequence in order to provide direction, specific direction, and no direction, no working mechanism, instructions for a working mechanism writes itself. It's just absurd to think of such a thing. So there's that, and it's about time that unbelievers just admit that they have no case, they have no argument, and that they have been negligent with the information that we have. It's not that there's no evidence, it's that you deny the evidence, that people deny the evidence that there is, because all of the evidence is of a maker, because everything that exists requires energy that can't make or direct itself or order itself. There's ordered energy in the sense that energy is bunched up like a spring, and it's winding down in the sense that it's dissipating heat. And that's what the universe is doing, and every astronomer or scientist will admit that the universe is going to die a heat death or a cold death. Everything's going to grow cold and stop working. It's basically go cold and die. The universe is going to die. Everybody knows that. Everybody admits that, but they don't tell the truth that energy can't order itself, that it didn't get ordered by itself. It has to be ordered by a greater force, and that greater force has to be ordered by a greater force, and a greater force, and a greater force, until you arrive at all power, all knowledge, all wisdom, all understanding. And you can see that in creation. Even the ancient people could see that in creation. When you look at an animal, the animal didn't make itself. The animal didn't have the wisdom to make its wings. It couldn't make its wings by trial and error, or its feathers. This owl right here has got silent feathers. Doesn't make noise when he flies. And that's not by accident. It's by design. And I mean, you can argue all you want. It's, you know, it's still by design, because you can't get instruction that's not there from unrelated mistakes in duplication. It's not going to write any instruction or programming to make anything. The best you can do, and every biologist can admit to this, the best that you can do is alter the amount of what's already there. Can alter the amount of cartilage, alter the amount of bone mass, alter the amount of melanin, either more or less. You can alter the amount of whatever is already there. You can make it more or less of what is already there. I mean, that's what variation is. What you can't do is find programming that's not there. Even bacteria, which could appropriate programming from other living organisms, doesn't do it because it reproduces after its kind. It can appropriate DNA for, all kinds of DNA from anything, basically. They appropriate DNA from each other too, but they remain bacteria because they only do what they're directed to do. And of course, things do go haywire, things do go wrong, and viruses, are information that goes bad, goes wrong, and bacteria can be organism that goes rogue, and opportunistic, but that's the nature of a fallen creation, a creation that has had its information altered or tampered with. And it was, of course, Adam and Eve that wanted to know what bad information could do. They wanted to know what believing a lie would do. Or they wanted to know if what the snake told them was true. And so they believed the lie as if it was true, and that lie was bad information, and that lie is what destroyed all of creation. And that's why everything has to be opportunistic, because it's running down. Everything's running down and running out. You can see, you look in this forest, I mean, there's a lot of animals and things, but the resources are quite scarce. The trees have to scrounge for nutrients. The deer have to scrounge to get nutrients from the trees, and everything is fighting for survival. And some of the things become opportunistic. Some of the things, or basically everything, becomes opportunistic as best it knows how or is able to. And because we're all fighting for limited resources that are running out. Because this world is not half as rich in life as what it was before the global flood that destroyed 99 or 95% of the animals, or 97 or something percent of all these animals that existed. Most of it marine life that was killed in the flood. And much, well, that's what it makes up. But still, we still have sea life, but it's not nearly as rich today as it was before the flood. After the creation, the Bible says that it was full of life, and you look in the ocean and you could, go for miles and miles and miles and not see anything living, But so everything has to work to get to exist, to survive, because there's limited resources. It used to be that all the resources you needed were in the plants and the trees and the fruit. But even though fruit is not as nutritious, and many of the plants have become uh, poisonous in order to survive, in order to protect themselves from being annihilated. Everything is doing its best to survive because everything's just running down. And we have to take responsibility for that. Since we are the highest form of life, most intelligent form of life, we have to take responsibility because there is nothing created that could be responsible for the condition we find the world and the universe in the world. And there's no other place we can go. I mean, you can theorize that there's other places that you might make it to, that humanity might arrive, but the conditions there aren't conducive to life. It's not like the Earth, you go off in space looking for a better place. It won't be a matter of days that you'll be wanting to get back on terra firma, on the solid ground. You'll be kissing the ground, as poor as it is, with the resources that we have. And because, I don't recommend going to Mars. It's too dangerous. It's far, far too dangerous. I don't even recommend going to the moon unless there's some kind of emergency need for that. I'd recommend that you stay here on Earth and discover and learn about things here on Earth, because you're going to learn more on Earth than you ever will in outer space. Not to take away from the astronomy, because I'm really impressed by astronomy, which I used to think that, there's not much more to discover in astronomy or the study of the elements of stars, but the fact remains that they keep learning more and more and more through astronomy. But I don't recommend anybody goes into space. I recommend that you send drones or whatever. They were just talking about sending drones to some moon or something, or someplace. I forget. I wasn't paying attention. But that's what I recommend doing. Send a vessel, a ship that can take all kinds of readings, instrumentation, whatever instrumentation is required or needed, and get all the information you can and learn all you can from the drones, or whatever you want to call them, that you send. Which I think is really good, because it's just it's more information. It can't hurt, and especially when we're not the ones going, we're not being hurt in the process. Nobody's going to be killed in the process. nobody's life is in jeopardy in the process. So, get all the information you can from all the moons, all the, from the sun. They sent a satellite to the sun. They're going to be understanding much more about the sun and how it makes light and energy, and how solid it is. Is it a liquid metal? Is it a gas? They say it's a gas. I don't know if I want to believe that. When Saturn and Jupiter are liquid hydrogen, liquid metallic hydrogen, how can the sun be a ball of gas? Doesn't make sense. Anyway, they're learning more and more all the time. So there's nothing wrong with that. And just like me, I'm content going into the jungle and learning all I can or the woods or whatever, learning all I can, much as I can from the woods, because it's exciting, it's new, it's intriguing. You learn a lot of stuff that you wouldn't otherwise know about, just by getting out and seeing things that God ordered, God commanded, And the Bible already says from the get-go, it says that everything was made by His Word. By His Word He made everything, And so that's by His instruction. At His instruction, the elements were made. At His instruction, biology was made. At His instruction, the heavens were made. The earth was made so that we could live on. At His instruction. Everything is by His Word. And if you want to know how to be salvaged or saved, it's by His Word. It's by the truth of His Word. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Salvation is through sanctification by the Spirit and believing what is true. The Bible is all about believing what is true, believing the truth. It's all about truth. It's always been about truth. It's all about that truth. And no other teaching is. Because only your Maker can perfectly cover for you Himself, because your sins are on and against Him to begin with. He's the only one that can overlook your sin or cover your sin. Only your Maker can perfectly cover for you Himself and remake you again from the inside out by the power of His true Word, as no one else can. So it's His truth that will remake you from the inside out and give you a clean heart. By His Word that we are cleansed. By His Word that we are instructed. By His Word we are enlightened. By His Word we walk in light and we don't stumble, is by His Word. And the only teaching where this is found is in the Bible. And of course, Yeshua is the Word that became flesh, and He dwelt among us. He was our brother. We beheld His glory as glory of the only begotten from the Father. So He was the only person existing who had Adam's original nature. In other words, He's the last Adam. Adam sinned, and he is the seed of the woman, which covers both Adam and Eve and everyone else. He is the last Adam. In other words, his father is God. He is our brother, and his father is God, and he is the only perfect provision for us. He's the only one that can cover for us. No one else can. Only God Himself can cover for you Himself. No one else can. Because it takes perfection to cover an imperfection, to make up for an imperfection. And that's why it says, to be encouraged, take heart. There is one who's worthy to open the seals. There is one who is able to make everything right. As prophesy, as soon as Adam and Eve sinned, word was given to them from the very beginning of the provision of Messiah, who would crush the serpent's head. As soon as Adam and Eve sinned, they were told about Messiah, Christ. So Christianity has been around from the beginning, because Christianity is about Messiah. It's about Christ. It's about Yeshua, our salvation. Only God can be your Savior. Moses said to listen only to God. And then he turned around and said to listen to Messiah when He's born among you. So that's a clear prophecy. And of course there's other prophecies about God being born in Bethlehem, about, go on and on and on. And only God can be our Savior. No one else can be. And Jacob wrestled with God. Abraham saw God. The mother of the Arab world, the 7 sons of Abraham, saw God. Well, no, Isaac. Not Isaac. Ishmael. The mother of Ishmael saw the God of Israel. She saw God and lived. Jacob saw God and lived. Moses saw God and lived. Abraham saw God and lived. Arguably, other people saw God and lived. And the only way you can see God and live is if you see Jesus or Messiah, because you can't see God. The only way you can see God in time and space is if God is born into time and space, and that's how you can see Him. That's the only way you can see God, in time and space. So it's not a contradiction, it's a deep truth. The Father is where all power comes from. He is greater than the universe. He made the universe. And we can't see Him because He's greater than the universe. We just can't see the maker of everything and all power that there is. Unless you want to fry instantly, because you're not worthy to see anybody like that anyway. But Yeshua made everything possible for us to be forgiven. And since we are forgiven, there's no reason, no excuse for us not to tell the truth anymore. There's no reason for us to be lying about God's creation. I have a video here. It's about, I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. There's a song that says, the deer and the antelope play. Sometimes if you grow up and you're not in the country, you might not even know that there is such a thing with a deer and the antelope playing. But I have a video of the deer playing. So, This is in twilight, or a little bit of light. It's not dark yet, but there's, they're clearly playing. I didn't know deer played, but, there's one video and I have another video. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, here, I gotta bring, there's another deer here. In the picture, I gotta bring them into the picture. They're jumping around all over the place. There you go, that's better. Oh, here we go. It's even better. Anyway, that's one video. Deer playing. The deer and the antelope play. Seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Here's another one, more in the daytime. I just thought it was interesting, and I thought I'd share it. The deer and the antelope play. I mean, most of the time you see deer, you don't see them jumping around and playing. That's all. And then there's this. Looks like a lion. It's not a lion. It's actually just a. I turned. It's actually just a lion, a bobcat. It's a bobcat. It looks like a big bobcat, but it's just a bobcat. Right at the beginning there. If I had a longer tail, you might think it was a lion. But that's my kitty cats. I thought this was a bear at first. It's not a bear. I think it's a behind of a. I was going through it. The behind of a deer, but see, there's the deer right there. And then, but I got a bunch of videos, because I'm still waiting to get the bear on video. I haven't got the bear on video. I'm trying to get the bear on video. Anyway. This is another bobcat video. It's more like a kitty cat. See, people make fun of simple people, rural people, people that live in nature as not knowing much of anything. But it's not true. People that live off in the woods often know a lot more than people that don't, because there's so much to understand, there's so much to see, there's so much to know about, and you're in the creation is actually what it is. So you're reminded continually of the Creator, because nothing can make itself. How is it supposed to make itself? It's just absurd. So then it's the educated people, supposedly educated people, that make themselves look really bad, look like morons. When you see everything, that God has created, see all of nature. I mean, look at this morning. Look at this beautiful day. early in the morning, calm, peaceful, serene. You know, how can how can you deny the the evidence of God? And of course, there's a balance in nature. There's a there's a you know a way to keep everything going, everything healthy and stuff. In nature, there's no animal abuse where you make small dogs with short legs that can't do anything for themselves. That doesn't exist in nature, and it shouldn't exist with people either. To me, that's horrible animal abuse when you breed animals to be small and helpless. To me, that's just wrong. If it can't survive, or defend itself, it's not right. So we have in nature that God made, at least the diminishing order that God put in place. Everything has a balance. The deer, you don't have too many deer, and you don't have too many wolves. And the wolves, well, it's not a wolf, it's a coyote, but anyway. But the wolves are good for nature. At least I think it's a coyote. Anyway, I don't know if we have wolves. Wolves. No, it's a coyote. The tail's too long. Coyotes have a long tail. Wolves have a shorter tail. Anyway, and they're bigger animals and stuff like that. But yeah, this is all stuff you have to learn. I mean, if you don't learn the simple things, and of course, if you don't learn real science, then you're in real trouble. I mean, I'm from the Amazon, and I understand a lot of things that in physics, and sometimes quantum physics, and sometimes astronomy, that people just don't take the time to think about it. All I do is think about it. It's not that I'm excessively intelligent, even though some scientists make me think I'm intelligent. But it's just that it's not complicated. All you got to do is just look at what the evidence is and follow the logical direction or course of events, and what we see happening is that we were made to exist inside a creation, inside of a created universe where life is possible. And of course, if anything was slightly different in any significant way, we wouldn't, of course, exist. I mean, life wouldn't be possible at all. Everything is just right. Everything is Goldilocks as far as the creation and where we exist in the world. And another thing, if you're concerned about global warming, if you're concerned about CO2, the solution would be to plant trees in deforested areas. There's a lot of deforested areas humans have been cutting down trees for thousands of years. That's the reason for the Sahara Desert. That's the reason for the Middle East being so dry like it is. It didn't used to be that way. It used to have forests. It used to have trees. It used to have mosquitoes. They used to have everything else, but they cut down all the trees over thousands of years. If you plant trees in deforested areas, it's not going to be easy at first, of course. You're going to have to plant the right trees and all the stuff, and you're going to have to care for it and all that stuff. But if you do that, you will find that there will be changes. There will be changes happening. You will find that the water table will rise. You will see lakes and ponds and rivers where there weren't any lakes and ponds and rivers because of planting trees. As a fact, it's already been done. It's already been done. Plus you get all this biodiversity of life and everything too. But it's already been done. In this year, in India is 10% greener because they're planting trees. 10% greener. In China, I don't know what they're doing in China. China is 40% greener because they're planting trees. There are places that are being restored, and the nature, the natural, forested areas and everything are coming back. Or the former places that used to be forested areas, they're coming back because people are planting trees instead of cutting them down. I mean, there's places in South America that were deforested in the mountains. The mountains, it used to be forested. It used to be fertile, and they just cut down all the trees, and now it's barren. But little by little, if you keep planting trees, you're going to raise the water table on land, which is essential for life. People are crying about losing access to drinkable water, clean water. If you plant trees, it'll raise the water table. Not only will it raise the water table, it will also lower the sea level in the process. I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up because whenever there's like a hurricane or something and it rains over land, the sea level is lowered because of it. And where does that water go? That water is on land. Now, if you had trees to hold the water in place, trees and shrubs and grass and everything, then you're holding all the water that you dumped on land, you're holding it instead of it washing back into the ocean. It'll take time to wash back into the ocean, and by that time there'll be more rain because it generates its own ecosystem. I mean, it's not complicated. It's not complicated. You don't need all this nonsense about fear-mongering and fearing rise in CO2. CO2 is what the plants need so that the plants can give us food and oxygen. If the plants don't get CO2, how are they going to give us food which is carbon, and oxygen. How are they going to do that? It's not complicated. All you have to do is sit back and think a little bit and see what the issues are and see what the problems are and put a solution in place to fix it. You know, people make me think I'm smart. I'm not really that smart. It's just that I think about what the issues are, what the problems are, and what the solution is, what the answer to the problem is. You know, you don't have to be a whiz kid to understand this stuff. It's not complicated. If I can understand it, it's not complicated. Now this here video is just to prove that I caught a raccoon on the video camera. No. Anyway, I enjoy this stuff here. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of animals. I mean, there's possums, there's armadillos, I think there's even wild pigs in some cases. There's turkeys. There's other things. There's owls. It's pretty neat. If you ask me, I think it's great. So you know what I'm doing when I become a free man. Not a free man according to law or anything, but a person that legitimately doesn't have to work for other people. That's what I mean by a free person, free man. When I no longer have to work for anybody else, then I'm a free man. Then I'm not a slave anymore to anybody. And you know, we're a slave to the system most of our lives, and then they use you up, and then you get old and die when you stop working. But I plan to be not needing to work for anybody anymore, any longer. Nobody is going to be able to tell me what to do or dictate what to do as far as working for them. So that to me is a free person. And if you're not self-sufficient like that, I don't see how you can say you're not a slave. Anyway, you're just kidding yourself, actually. So, I mean, if you can't go out and experience something like this, then your life is very boring, to say the least. I mean, it's here for us to enjoy. And if you're not able to enjoy it, then what kind of life are you leading? You know? Anyways, this is not all the videos I have. I have a whole bunch of videos, but I have these here just to show what's out there. You know. But anyways, I guess there's nobody out today, or everybody's afraid to talk. Nobody wants to talk. What do we got here? Two people, what do you call that? Well, on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. Somebody watching, somebody not watching. I don't know what's going on. Nobody's saying anything. I would like to think everybody's just busy and not able to participate or join. And I know they can't answer to the issues anyway. So I guess if I get tired of talking, then I'll just shut down the live stream. But I thought I would share my brand new theory about the origin of the universe according to the evidence that we see. So, contrary to Stephen Hawking's statement that the universe makes itself because of gravity, she actually said that. The universe can make itself because of gravity. I mean, just think about it. Man, he must have been, maybe he was, losing his brilliance or something. I don't know. Because he used to even believe in God. He used to even talk about God until people are saying, oh, you can't talk about God. You got to say there's no God. And then, the Bible says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Because they think they know something. They think they know more than God. And they make themselves look bad. I think that's what was going on, basically, or that's what goes on all the time with everybody that's a secularist or believer in nature or naturalist in the sense of philosophy or origins. I mean, all the laws of science are against anything making itself. But I don't want to go through the whole thing again, but all you gotta do is use your head. It's not complicated. Say the nature of a cat is the nature of a cat. Nature of a coyote is the nature of a coyote, which is very different from a cat. You might argue that a fox is from dogs, or foxes came from dogs. Well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Maybe they're their own thing, What I do know is that jaguars and leopards are the same animal. And they got separated when the continents split. So, and there's other examples, other animals too. There, the honey badger. There's a version of the honey badger in South America. It's basically the same thing. It almost looks identical. It's called the greater grison. Of course, they name it a different name because they don't want to admit that they used to be on the same continent. Because the Earth broke apart 100 years after the global flood. The Earth got brittle and broke apart, or maybe it was helped out by an asteroid or something, hitting the Yucatan Peninsula or something like that. But anyways, the Earth broke apart. The Bible says the Earth was divided. That was 100 years, in the days of Peleg, 100 years after the global flood. It says the Earth was divided. Some people think that that was the people being divided because that's when the Tower of Babel was, or at least shortly after that. I think they were not exactly at the same time. They were not coinciding events because of the evidence. Because of the evidence of jaguars in South America and leopards in Africa, which is the same animal. No matter what anybody says, it is the same animal. They are compatible. It's the same animal. Now, maybe lions and tigers were also on the ark. You know, that's a possibility. I'm not sure about that, but that seems to be what the indication is. Because I mean, how much can you change? How much can a cat change in 100 years? And in 100 years, the jaguar and the leopard got separated. And they're a little bit different. They're a little bit unique to what they are, but they're entirely compatible with each other. And of course, there's other leopards too. There's snow leopards. There's this leopard, that leopard, the other leopard, and all kind of leopards. Even all kinds of other cats too. You know what I mean? But it's hard to say whether or not, it's hard to say that there weren't also tigers and lions and cheetahs on the ark. The cheetah, I think, was domesticated by the Egyptians, and and then the cheetah probably, escaped or whatever, and that's the reason why the genome or genetic diversity is like almost non-existent. They're almost all identical animals with a little bit of variation with some cheetahs, but almost all cheetahs are almost all identical. So I think they were domesticated by the Egyptians and then maybe got away or were escaped or something or whatever. But anyway, and the bobcat is, quite different, quite unique. The lynx, the bobcat, they're all the same animal. Because you have European ones, you have American ones, and the saber-toothed tiger or the saber-toothed lion, I believe, existed in America after the global flood. I mean, I believe it's possible because of the tar pits. I think that they were living, because those aren't fossils. The animals that fell in the tar pits aren't fossils they're not fossilized from the flood, the global flood. They fell in the tar pit and got stuck. I think they were living, the animals in the tar pits of California or wherever it is, they were living after the global flood. They were here. And I think some of the mammoths were living in America and stuff like that, or whatever they are. Mastodons or whatever you want to call them. But mammoths, there's variation in the mammoths and stuff, but they're not all that different. Some of them are different, but, still, everything has to be made to be what it is, with some variations. Anyways, I don't want to make this too long. How long has it been going? Let's see. It's been going long enough, I think. So, I don't have any questions, so I would be more than willing and glad to answer questions. But if not, you can just leave your questions in the comments section, and I'll see if I can help. But it's not complicated. There's, we have to go by what evidence we have. If it's historical, genealogical, there has to be evidence. If there's not evidence, you can't make an opinion. You can't form an opinion without having evidence for that opinion. And that's the problem people get into, is that everybody's got a lot of opinions, but they're not going by what the evidence is. It's not there's no evidence, it's just that they're not going by the evidence, or they don't know what the evidence is. Of course, history is only 6,000 years, human history, calendars, everything. Well, the calendars are only 5,000 years old. And the genealogical history of mankind is actually about over 6,000 years old. And beyond that, we don't have any evidence. We can't make evidence that's not there. And the evidence that we do have is evidence that makes sense of everything, because there has to be a perfect provision from the very beginning, or at least from the time Adam and Eve sinned. There has to be a provision for sin. There's no provision for sin, then it's not going to make sense. It's never, and it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be right, and we're not going to exist. We only exist because there's a perfect covering for us. If there's no perfect covering for us, you wouldn't see anything here. You wouldn't see any evidence whatsoever, because God wouldn't exist if He wasn't perfect. Anyway, let's try to end this, I guess. Yep. So, only God can be your Savior. Only your Maker can remake you again. Nobody else can. That's a fact. Alright, see you, everybody.